Hello, welcome to our conversation. It's nice to have you out there. Um, we have a delightful partner here today for a conversation. Rachel Lee Cummings is the new Executive Director for the Counseling Service of Addison County, and we are just really pleased to know that you're here and to
Thank you.
welcome you here. And you're still in the transition,
I am.
and maybe you can tell us about your experience so far.
Sure. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me. And it's a pleasure because I get to talk about the counseling service, which
Sure.
is an incredible organization. Why don't I start with sort of what my transition has been like and
Sure.
what my approach has been like.
That's good.
As you know, I replaced Bob Thorne, who's had been at CSAC for over 40 years. And so that was those were a big set of shoes to fill. And I've made it a priority during my transition to really get to know all of our staff. We are about 300 people, and that's large, but it's not that large. And I feel that it's my responsibility to get in front of as many of our staff and meet as many people and know as many names as possible. So my focus has been going to different staff meetings, having one-on-ones, going out in the fields. Yesterday I got to shadow our emergency team, and they do some incredible work for people in crisis. I've been meeting with community partners. I've been meeting with other designated agencies, so other community mental health agencies that are based in Vermont, and specialized service agencies who only do developmental services. And so I've learned a lot. I am trying to check my judgments and my assumptions and really be as open as possible in understanding who we are as an agency, how we got here, why we got where we're going, and how it fits into the larger context of the community of people we serve.
That sounds very impressive
Thank you.
and very challenging and very busy.
It's very busy, and it's a lot of fun. We have
You
incredible.
do like to have fun.
I do, yes.
Yes, you
Well, we should all have some
Yes,
fun
we do.
when we can.
I do too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have really good people, and they're
Yeah.
all there for the right reason. And they've been very welcoming and open and eager to share their story. And I appreciate that.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your experience in life before you came to
Sure.
the promised land.
That's right. Yes. Well, I guess you're asking about my work experience and sort of how I got here.
Or your personal life.
Sure, I can. Well, I have an interesting background. My parents were hippies, and my mom and my father lived in India for 15 years and had 3 children. And I grew up on the beaches of Goa, which is a former Portuguese colony in southern India, southwest India. Grew up in a very small fishing village. I was one of the few white kids there. Went to school with all the local kids. We had no running water. We had a well in our front yard. We had no electricity. And we sort of ran wild and free with very little supervision. And it was wonderful. It was a really wonderful, small, tight-knit community. I grew up with a lot of older people and a lot of young people. And not a lot of grown-ups. And I feel really lucky to have had that experience of living overseas. I came back to the States when I was about 9 and lived with my grandparents, Armistead and Eleanor Lee, in Arlington, Virginia. And they were some of the most incredible people I've ever had the privilege of knowing. They were a really stabilizing force in my life and in the lives of my siblings. They were really invested in us during a chaotic time in our childhood and a really uncertain time. It was a real cultural shock to come back to the States. And they just made it okay. And they were patient and loving and provided really great care. And I feel sort of helped set us up for success as adults. I made my way to Vermont at about 10, I think 10 and a half, I don't quite remember anymore, and lived in rural Vermont in Westford. and lived with my mom and stepfather and my two siblings, Emily and Noah. And my parents ran a food business. And so I grew up in a family business that was 24/7, and the kids were just as much a part of it as worker bees as my mom and stepfather. So it was they made, my stepfather's Turkish, and it was called Cobb's Corner. And so they made Mediterranean dips like hummus, mohamara. We also expanded into some Mexican foods like salsa and burritos, and they distributed that food throughout New England. And my stepfather would go to the Boston produce markets and bring back food, bring back produce. And if it was 8 in the morning or midnight, the kids had to get up and unload those refrigerated trucks. And so I think it really taught us a work ethic that we work hard, and we contribute as a family, and that really helped inform me as an adult when I started my own business, a home care agency called Armistead, named after my grandfather, which I started in college and then ran for 11 years and sold. And then I started a guardianship practice, and my focus has always been in geriatrics, and again, I think influenced by my grandparents and just having that love and that presence around me, and probably going back to India, growing up around a lot of older people. But I'm enormously proud of what I started and the jobs I created and the care that we provided and the good quality care we provided. And coming to CSAC is the first time I've sort of expanded the population I work with, and it's such a pleasure to serve children and serve young adults and adults and the whole spectrum. So
interesting line of experiences leading to commitments, leading to excitement, leading to. Am I reading that right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's a very rich and splendid background.
Thank you. Yeah.
So you started your own business, right? What was that? What was that like?
Well, I felt like I had no choice but to. I was a sociology major at UVM, studying with a concentration in gerontology, and I thought, what am I going to do with this degree? I put my own way through school, and I couldn't go on to graduate school just yet. And I thought, well, I'll start a business. I had paid my way through college doing home care with older Vermonters. And I remember putting together a cash flow and a budget. And my first year, I showed that I made $12,000, and I was so excited to show my mom, who helped, educate me around finances. And I had a plan, and I did it, and I employed friends, and I had a commitment to quality, and really fostering good jobs, because that for me meant really good care. And over the 11 years, we did that really well. And I loved the population I worked with. I felt so comfortable in my skin, hanging out with 80 and 90-year-olds versus 20-year-olds. That felt right to me at that time in my life. And
so that became a signal of all things to come.
I think it provided a guide for me for service. We always said, we were a for-profit with a nonprofit heart. We partnered really tightly.
Oh, that's a good line.
Yeah, we partnered really tightly with the Area Agency on Aging and the VNA and other nonprofits to really, pay attention in the right places and make sure we were working well together to deliver good service.
I noticed in some of your writing, describing your past experiences, you were co-founder and co-facilitator.
Oh, yes.
So what's that like to be both founder and a facilitator?
Well, so you're speaking about the support groups I started.
Your support group.
Yeah, so I started
Harmony.
Yes.
Harmony something.
In Harmony.
In Harmony.
And that was a support group for people who were diagnosed with early onset dementia. So imagine you're in the workforce, you're not yet retired, and you get a pretty devastating diagnosis of early onset dementia. And how do you manage that with your partner, with your spouse, with your children? How do you come out at your job? And how do you find other people going through the same experience as you are, and to sit with you and to hold that with you? And so that was the intent of that support group, which is still going, even though I'm not part of it. Yes, and some of the same people who were the founding participants are still part of that.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I run into folks occasionally.
Yeah,
so
longevity of service.
Yes.
And longevity of relationships that's a good indication that something's right going on here.
I think that was a group where something is going right, and it was needed, and people found some community there and didn't have to carry this diagnosis alone and in isolation, whether you were the person with the diagnosis or the partner caring for that person or getting ready to care for that person. So
I also, in one of your pieces that you wrote, remember that you talked about what you were passionate about, and the one that I remember was passionate for people who fall through the cracks.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Yes, I think that we have a society and systems that, when you look at them, you know, they don't work well together sometimes, and they don't meet the enormous need that exists in the community for people who are fragile, who are living on the margins. And when people have to navigate multiple systems, they're often falling through the crack. You know, this really came from care I provided to a couple who had come to the States. They had escaped the Muslim Hindu riots in India and come to the States to visit family members, and got stuck because one of the couple got really seriously ill and could no longer travel. And the family needed an enormous amount of help, but did not have the resources and didn't qualify for anything because the parents were here as guests, not as citizens and not as residents. And so I had to work really closely with our area agency on aging to really figure out, how do we support these people who desperately need help so that they can live lives of dignity and get better, but there was no money and no resources around to do that. So it was a commitment that I made through my business to help, you know, people like that, and to give away free care when people couldn't afford care. That was a small part of it because I was a business and I had to support a payroll and support an infrastructure and support myself. But that again was that nonprofit heart where we had a commitment to the community outside of people who could afford a service.
A nonprofit heart. Say some more about that. What does that look like, feel like? How do you know when that's happening, and in contrast to other motivations?
Sure.
What might be happening?
Well, you know, Armistead was a for-profit, but we had guiding values and a mission that really helped direct us and helped lead our growth. And that was making sure the bottom line mattered, because, you know, margin meant a healthy business and that we were making it, and that I was able to support myself and my family and contribute to that. But it also meant that I could reinvest in the business, and reinvestment meant that I could have robust training programs for my staff, that I could provide care to people who didn't have the means to pay for it themselves. I could invest and donate to other, you know, community nonprofits as a business. So it wasn't just about the bottom line, but it was a more holistic look at how we conduct ourselves as a business. I think today I would probably have incorporated as a B corporation, which is sort of a new entity.
What is a B corporation?
Well, I'm probably not explaining it. We'll explain it eloquently, but a B corporation is essentially that. You're a business, you're a for-profit business, but you're guided by certain principles of investing in the community and investing in a mission, and you know, and it's a little more nuanced than just making sure you have a robust bottom line. So,
if you were, it's early in your time here, but if you could identify one or two things about which you feel in relationship to our community and your work and the counseling service passionate about? I know you're passionate about all of it.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not fair to do that, but just something that would give us a signal of what we should be passionate about.
Well, you should be passionate about everything CSAC does.
That's
because it's truly a remarkable organization.
Yes,
and it's remarkable because of the people that work there. And they're there for the right reasons. They're mission driven. But what's interesting about CSAC is it's also people who are out of the box thinkers. And so, for example, in our youth and family, we have a public health campaign in conjunction with other community partners. It's not just a CSAC-led initiative, but it's called the Resiliency Project. And it started because we started to notice and gather data that children in our schools were feeling increasingly isolated, high rates of depression and anxiety, feeling of not belonging. And we were thinking, well, what does that mean as children get older? What are their coping mechanisms? How do we teach them to be resilient youth? Because their experiences now will help inform them as they get older.
Sure. And
so it's a public health campaign to really figure out how we bend the curve on those markers of anxiety, depression, isolation. And it's working tightly with other community partners like this, the Department of Health, with the child care centers throughout Addison County, like the Parent-Child Center, with primary care and pediatric offices, and with CSAC, home health. And I think that there's a lot of potential and excitement there, thinking that if we invest early on in young people, that means we'll have a more healthy community and more healthy population. I'm also really impressed with our DS, our developmental services. We have a great jobs program, and CSAC, we really believe in people having employment and purpose in that through that employment. And we have some of the highest employment rates in Vermont and in the country. And that's because of the good matching that we do, the strong relationships that we have in the business community, and the really skilled staff who not only provide coaching, but direction and help and support for people to be successful in work. And then I'm really excited, you and I are going through a training for Open Dialogue. Which is really amazing in how it changes the conversation around mental health and what healing means and what recovery means and who we invite into the conversation.
It could be a lot of different people.
That's right.
But people who are important to the individual.
To that individual. It's talk about client-centered, person-centered conversation. And it really kind of, breaks down the hierarchy that exists in healthcare and in mental health care, and rethinks how we have those conversations and who holds the power in that circle. So I've been profoundly impacted by the stories I hear that come out of those open dialogue sessions. And I'm also so impressed by what I hear from staff who feel hopeful in their participation of it, and say to me, this is the first time that I'm having these kind of conversations with clients. And I think that's a good direction. So.
You've been mentioning the various programs. Are there misconceptions about what the counseling service is that people might have? Because you've described a whole richness of approaches and concerns and resources, but have you find that there's some misconceptions that people have that kind of say, I this is what I think this is all about, but it's not really what it's all about, Am I making that clear?
Yeah, I think the biggest issue that a couple of issues that I'm coming across, I think people do understand who we are and how to find us and come to us. Unfortunately, we're not the solution for everything. We provide some specific services. Our role is to partner tightly with other community providers so that people aren't falling through the cracks, and that people have an easier time navigating complex and multiple systems that don't talk well together sometimes. We have to do that. That's good customer service, and that's good client care. I think people misunderstand we're not a state agency. Most of our revenue is Medicaid, but we're a nonprofit, and we need community support and help and engagement, and that means volunteering, that means donations, that means interest in who we are and what we do. I think that people don't understand how large we are and complex we are as an agency. We, as I said, employ about 300 people. We have several buildings, including some residences across the county. And what I'd like is for people to know that we are out there and we're available, and to be aware of us, whether you're an employer or you're a mom struggling with a child, or you're somebody struggling, with feelings of depression or anxiety, that we're out there and available.
Well, one of the words that is really a strong word in Addison County is collaboration. It's generally been regarded that Addison County is one of the best examples of collaboration in social services. Could you say something about collaboration as you've experienced it so far?
Yes. Well, I think that's true. I think Addison's County is almost that perfect size where collaboration can actually happen, and everybody at the table. So it's been interesting to come in as an outsider where I don't know everybody at the table, and I have to make a real effort to be familiar. But I think, our conference rooms are a great example. They are filled with community members, with groups who meet every single day of every single month, coming together to work on big system issues. We have our community health action team, our chat, and that draws together different providers, whether you're in child care, you're in medical care, you're a housing provider, to really come and look at where are we going as a county? How do we address these big issues? How do we address these systems gaps? And so it's nobody working in isolation, but really trying to come together to figure it out.
I remember when SESAC was in, I think it was 12 or 14 different sites in Middlebury.
Yes.
And so everybody was in a little closet here or a little closet there.
Yeah.
And the buildings that have been built are really remarkable. They are so well constructed, and they are so, as you say, they're very much used all the time.
They are. And that was our commitment to the community, because the community helped build that, our 109 building. And so I do consider it, available, and part of the community. So.
And 89 was expanded.
That's right.
And all the air conditioners got out of the windows.
That's right, yeah. They're beautiful buildings, and people deserve to be cared for in beautiful spaces.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that's part of healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what do you do for fun?
Well, I'm just, if it would stop raining, I would start gardening. I have a veggie garden that my family helps me with. My family and I love to camp. We go canoe camping. So the Waterbury Reservoir, I forget the other place we like to go to up north. But, you pack everything into a canoe that you're going to need for the couple of days, and you set off. And there's,
you do that?
Yes, and there's no Wi-Fi. There's, no electricity.
I thought that was only in commercials.
No, it's actually true. It does happen.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
yes. And my kids actually enjoy it.
Your kids are just how old?
My daughter Lucy is going to be 8 in August, so almost there. And my son Alexander is 12.
What great ages.
Yeah, they are fantastic ages.
And marvelous time.
Yeah. They're good kids.
That's good.
Yeah, they're really good kids. Thank you.
Well, have we missed anything that you'd like to share?
Well, I guess if you're a community member out there and you're watching this and you're curious about who I am as the executive director,
Okay.
or you feel like I should, know about a certain place or meet with a certain person, please do reach out to me.
Okay. And we thank you for spending the time. I
Thank you, Len.
appreciate it. And we thank you for being with us for this conversation. You've had the information about where you might contact Rachel or contact the counseling service. It is an incredible agency, caring people, serving to make a difference in the lives of individuals and our communities. So reach out to it. Reach out for the help and for the support and for the joy that comes when we live in a healthy community. Thank you very much. Have a good day.